I've decided to do a video on how to verify if you have a bad tie rod end. Now, I already have a video on replacing one, but I think because it's such a common problem that there's some value in doing a video on just how to check your vehicle to see if you have a bad tie rod end. So what you're going to see is 3 different tie rod ends that I have replaced on different vehicles that I've worked on. And what I wanted to do is I've cut the clips to show you the symptoms of a worn tie rod end. And this is your average tie rod end. In the video you'll see this part here is connected to your lower control arm, and I'm going to try to show the symptoms of a defective tie rod end, a worn one. And it's very common, and you may notice a couple times in the videos where I might reference something about other than the tie rod end, and that is generally because that may have been cut out of a different video that I might have been doing about how to change something around the brakes or something like that. But because tie rod ends wearing on vehicles that have any amount of miles on them is very common, I thought it might be just a good idea. And what the big thing to look for, and I think you'll see it in the video, is that you will see if you shake your wheel horizontally, you will see movement in it depending on how worn it is. And I think the last clip you'll really see what a worn tie rod end symptom is like. I have a lot of vertical movement, or sorry, horizontal movement there. Now there's blocks. I've already put blocks, even though I haven't taken this wheel off. I've already put blocks just in case something happens. You've got to be very careful doing this kind of thing if you have the vehicle jacked. You also want to have blocks in place. Now it's important at all times. You want to be taking your time and working safe. It's really important once you take the tire off. Once you get this wheel off, if anything catastrophic happens, you want this vehicle to be on jack stands or safely blocked, so you can always refer to your manual about where a good place to block it is, or you may have an idea. Now, checking this, we can see that this is loose, so I'm going to have a further look into that to see what issue is there. Now, when I go vertically shake it, I don't know if you can hear that. I can actually hear it when I go do the horizontal shake. If I was getting movement both ways, horizontally also, if we're getting it that way, I'm suspecting probably a tie rod end. If I was getting an equal amount of movement when I shake it vertically, I would be suspecting a wheel bearing. But there's not that same looseness when I shake it this way. And maybe you might even be able to hear that. So, at this point, I'm going to take off the wheel lug nuts and take off the wheel, and we'll have a check from there. Also, be very careful when you're looking for movement vertically. Don't put your hand underneath the tire. Put it off to the side. As I say, again, just in case something happens, you don't want your fingers to be underneath that wheel if the vehicle dropped. I have a worn tie rod end on this vehicle. I'm going to try to show this in the video. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I already have a video on how to change a tie rod end. So here's the tie rod end here, down in here. This is the outer tie rod end. And here's the steering knuckle where it connects. So the tie rod end is coming up inside the steering knuckle, and then this bolt is connecting it on. Again, you can see the vehicle is blocked. So what I'm going to do is, without blocking the video here, hopefully I'll be able to show this. As I move the steering knuckle back and forth, you can see that the tie rod end is not moving. That should move in unison, really. But we can see that this, hopefully you can see anyway, that the steering knuckle is moving here, but the tie rod, outer tie rod end is not. And that's indicating that this tie rod end is worn inside here. There's a ball joint in this tie rod end that goes up and through, and I'll just shake that again. Hopefully you can see that. The tie rod end has been replaced, and hopefully you can see this. Before I was showing how when you looked at the tie rod end here and the steering knuckle, and when I moved the steering knuckle, that you could see the steering knuckle move independently of the tie rod end. Now with the new tie rod end in there, hopefully this will show up on the camera, but as I shake that steering knuckle even a bit, you can see the tie rod end moves with it. Another thing, you didn't really see it with this tie rod end when it was bad, but a lot of times if you move them up and down and they're worn, you'll actually feel it moving and hear kind of a clicking noise as you move the outer tie rod end here up and down. The wheel is back on. Again, the issue we had was when I put pressure on the wheel and the back and forth motion, we had play in it. Now hopefully you can see that that's gone. So the new tie rod end is taking care of that issue. Let's go up and down here. Again, keeping my fingers away from the underneath part of the wheel here. So that's what you should have when you have a good tie rod end. No play in the wheel. So hopefully those last couple of shots I took there, you could see what I was doing. Turned out that the tie rod end was worn, so I just replaced that. A little bit disappointed that that was what the problem was actually, because I already did a video on replacing a tie rod end. But at any rate, what I was trying to show, and I wasn't talking so that hopefully the viewer could hear the noise, was that as I lifted the tie rod end up, now I'll do this one, that's good and tight. There's no, you can't hear any clicking noise. If it's worn, there'll be movement up and down as you pull it. And when you take the wheel, a good sign of a worn tie rod end is that when you shake the wheel side to side, as opposed to up and down, when you shake it side to side, you'll feel movement. And hopefully I was able to get that across in that last video shot there.